We want to have a series about relationships, not just romantic relationships, but relationships in general, because relationships matter. They matter. And I want to say from the outset, one of the things we've always tried to build and foster here and Curate in all of its forms and locations is that this is a place where you can find acceptance and grace no matter where you're at. And so we want to say from the outset, it doesn't matter your relational past, it doesn't matter your relational present, and it doesn't matter your relational future. When you are part of this community, you're loved for who you are. And it doesn't matter the story. So we just want to say that because we know that in our rooms, there's people going through divorce. There's people that have been through a horrific situation. I don't want to talk about them all, but you just know it doesn't matter where you've been. It doesn't matter what the future holds. You'll always be loved here for just who you are. But with that said, we also want to be a place that fosters healthy relationships and helps people and encourages people as much as they can to do relationships well. Yeah.
The other thing is important to know is that we are not relationship experts. We are not love experts.
I think they understand.
Yeah. But, for anyone who might be new, I just want to point that out. We are fellow journeyers. We've learned a lot through our family. When we got married, we were a little blended family. Me, Joel, and my little boy, Sandro. And then...
In Tauranga,
doing
worship,
awesome.
Yep.
He's amazing. We've learned a lot ourselves, but we do a lot of work with people. So we've learned a lot through people, and we've studied a lot of what the scripture says on it. And so we're just fellow journeyers with you guys.
Yeah, I think we haven't by any means figured it out, but like many people, we value our marriage and we value our relationships and our friendships, and so we've tried to work on them to make them as good as they can, and we will continue to work on them in the future, which annoyingly normally means working on yourself. I wish working on the relationship meant working on the other, but it normally means working on yourself.
Yeah, how does that work out for you, eh?
Look, we want to start this by talking this morning about seasons. Seasons, because our lives have seasons, our relationships have seasons, our friendships have seasons. Even in the progression of a relationship, if we just talk about a romantic relationship, there's seasons, right? There's a dating season, and then there might be an engaged season if the dating season went good, and then if the engaged season went good, there'll be a married season, a wedding season, then there's a young married, a kid season if that's what you end up doing, and then there's the kid leaving home season, the emptiness. There's these seasons, and then within that there's seasons. There's good times, there's hard times, there's times where it's just like, it's like the love eyes emoji, and then there's times where it's like brain explosion emoji, but there's all of these sorts of times, right? Which time would you say we're in right now? Like if you were to have an emoji that sums up.
Yeah, I reckon the one that has like all the love hearts around it, that smiley one.
Really?
Yeah.
That's not how I would describe it at all.
Well, that's why I'm happier.
Go for it. Let's get the Bible out.
All right, let's get the Bible out, guys, because clearly we need it. So let's go to Ecclesiastes 3, verse 1 to 11. It's a bit of a long one. Feel free to read along with me. It should be up there. It says, "For everything there is a season, a time for every activity under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to harvest, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to cry and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to turn away, a time to search and a time to quit searching, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be quiet and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace." How do people really get, what do people really get for all of their hard work? I have seen the burden God has placed on us all, yet God has made everything beautiful for its own time. He has planted eternity in the human heart. But even so, people cannot see the whole scope of God's work from beginning to end.
We live in a time where probably for most people, their life is removed as much as possible from the seasons, as much as you can, other than the weather. I mean, we all understand the weather when it comes to seasons, but most of us are not involved in agricultural work or different things like that. So a lot of our world is about removing the seasonal nature from our lives. We increasingly make it more mechanical, more predictable, more controllable. And so it's hard for us to even sometimes grasp seasons. I mean, we escape the seasons, right? This is the time of year where people try to go on holidays to places where the season is the more favorable season that they enjoy in their lives. And so this whole idea of seasons, I think we become more and more immune to, because we more and more want everything to be the same. We want everything to be predictable. We want every season to be summer. We want every time to be easy. We want all of life to be downhill. And we know that we can't get it that way, but so much of our disappointment, or when we can get despondent, is when it's not all a summer season in our lives or in our relationships. But in Genesis 8:22, it says, as long as the earth remains, there will be planting and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, and day and night. And I want to say, for every relationship, there will be seasons. You cannot avoid it. You cannot escape it. The seasons will come and the seasons will go. And I always know when the season changes in our household, because Katie starts complaining afresh about her wardrobe. You know, like the new season comes around, I hear, I just don't have any winter clothes. I know it's like, it must almost be winter. And then it's like, I don't have any summer clothes. And then I don't have any spring clothes. And I don't know, you just like make up seasons. It's like a week you need a new outfit or something like that. But seasons change, don't they?
They do. And I would object, but it's absolutely true. For sure. Don't you find like you go to the winter wardrobe and you're like, it feels stale. You need like some new pieces in there, right?
That. Yeah,
yes,
I find
that happens for sure. But you know, I don't think any of us have a problem embracing the season that we want to be in. Like, I have no problem embracing my summer holiday. You know, we have no problem embracing when our relationships are going really well. We have no problem embracing those seasons. But I think we do, the question that we all ask is, how do I fully embrace the season that I don't want to be in? A season that maybe I didn't choose to be in. Or maybe even more likely, how do I fully embrace a season with the good parts that I love about it, but also the parts that I really, really struggle with? And you know, I think that's why the first thing we're going to talk about is adapting to our seasons. Because if we don't adapt to our seasons, we're not going to move through it with health.
And you should talk about that, because I'm not very good at it. I'm not very adaptable as a person. I just freaked out that the furniture changed on the plan.
He
today,
did have a little freak out. I took him over there and I was like, get out all the complaints, get them all out, and then we can move forward.
Yeah. But you're adaptable.
Totally. Adapting is my jam. And so adapting to seasons, I like this. But, you know, we have to adapt to seasons. If you think about it, many of our relationships don't make it through season changes. I mean, think about high school. You think, I am going to be best friends with these people forever, right? Like, you can't fathom a time that you would not be best friends. But then a season change of university, of job, of someone moving away, someone had a baby. You know, our seasons change, and often our relationships don't make it through the seasonal changes. Which is why friends who are with you on the long haul and family who are with you throughout all the seasons become incredibly dear to us, because it's not the norm. You know, the norm is that our relationships actually don't make it all the way through, and which is why I believe it's so important that we must fully adapt to our new season to have relational health. You know, I think that so many people, and so many of us, when we are single and then we get into a relationship, we can behave like single people, but we're in a relationship. You know, a lot of people get married and they...
We should have set ground rules before we started, like no nudging the person next to you.
Yeah, we probably should have.
No being home. That was for you, just, you know.
Yeah. Stay in your lane.
I saw some elbows there.
Stay in your lane. We can see the elbows. You too in Tauranga and Whakatane. But you know, the problem is if we don't adapt our mindset, if we don't change the way we think, if we don't change the way we act, then we will behave like single people in a relationship. You see it with parents who have their first children. If you don't adapt your expectations, if you don't adapt your mindset, if you don't adapt, then you will be acting like a person without children, the you without kids, except you have kids. And then they are going to become increasingly disruptive to your life because you haven't fully adapted to stepping fully into being a mother or a father. And so you behave like the you without them. And you know, they feel it. And I think the people in our life, they feel it when we don't fully adapt and embrace the new role in our life.
I think the bigger the seasonal change, the bigger the adaptation needs to be. And that's the thing that sometimes the seasonal changes to our relationships, they're predictable, as in, oh, okay, we know we're getting married, or we know that we're having a child, and there's a time to prepare and a time to adapt. But some of the changes aren't things we choose, they choose us. Somebody gets incredibly sick. Somebody close to us dies, some tragedy happens, we lose a job or something like that. And so sometimes seasonal change, it comes at us from nowhere and we don't have the time to prepare for it necessarily, but we do need to recognize if it's a big change in season, I need to make some big changes. Yeah. And I think that's where sometimes we can think that, man, it's the seasons of change, but I can keep doing the same thing I used to do, and that's where we get caught out.
Yeah. That's right.
Like Katie pretty much left me when we first got married. I asked which story I could share of like when I didn't change enough, and so this was the story Katie said I'm allowed to share. And when we first got married, we were living in Australia for a few months, and I really like surfing. But Katie's more or less beaten that out of me now.
I love when you go surfing, excuse me. That was not fair.
But we just got married, we're in Australia, and surf's good, the water's good, like everything's good. And so here I am acting like I'm still a single person, surfing every waking hour that I'm not working every day. And then Katie's caught at home with our one child, and so then she's, you know, she doesn't really know anybody there we were living, but I know a bunch of people. And so, yeah, it got to breaking point. I remember that one night, it was at breaking point where you're about to book a ticket home and go home to your parents or whatever it was. But it was a classic situation of like this something massively had changed, but I hadn't changed for the new season. And because I hadn't changed, the relationship was suffering. And just we've got to change with the seasons, as quickly as we possibly can.
That's right.
Just to keep the good ones close.
True. But you know, I always find that we need to trust God in each season. We need to trust that He has what we need for each season. We need to trust that, you know, we're not adapting to the season on our own. It's hard to step into a new role. It's hard to step into a new season, but we do that with God. You know, it says in Philippians 4 verse 11, I am not saying this because I'm in need, for I have learnt to be content with whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learnt the secrets of being content in and every situation. Whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or want, I can do all this through Him who gives me strength. And so you may not feel like you have what it takes to get through the season, to do the season well, but you're not alone in the season. And so if it is something that is a really big stretch and a really big step, I want to encourage you. You have the Holy Spirit and you have God's grace, and it's sufficient for you in this season.
That's right. There's sort of two things to adapting to the season. It's trusting that God has the grace for you in every season. There is not a season you will find yourself in any relationship where God does not have what you need to walk out that season well. And it's so important to remember, you will never arrive in a relational season where God leaves you alone, where God doesn't have the resources you need, the encouragement you need, the transformation you need. You know, we get to these seasons in our relationships, or I've got there where I just feel like, I just cannot become the person that I need to become. I cannot change these things. But the more I press into God in these seasons, it's amazing how His grace is always sufficient for every season. Yeah. I think on a practical way, sometimes we just need to take a step back and go, what season am I in? And who do I need to be in this season? Yeah. Just sometimes it might be just taking stock and going, what season am I actually in? And who do I need to be in this season? Because it wasn't the last season, and I might not need to be the same person I was. I might need to be someone a little bit different. Yeah. Blessed are the flexible, for they shall not break. You know, and that really becomes like the key when it comes to walking out the seasons in our relationships. That's right. Now, it's important when some seasons catch us off guard and we've just got to adapt, but some seasons are predictable. Like we know they're coming, and I know at home, you know, when the season's changing, there's a whole bunch of stuff that happens in our house. Like I know that winter's coming, so we prepare for winter by getting all the firewood sorted for winter. We know the season's coming, so we prepare for the season ahead. You know, might put certain things away. All the outdoor furniture gets put in different places, so it's under shelter and different things. But the lawnmower goes away because it's not needed as much. I'm trying to think what else actually happens. You know, spray some stuff. I don't know, practical things. But how do we prepare for the season ahead?
Yeah, well, preparing is really not my strength. I'm better at the adapting than the preparing. But through mistakes, this is what I've learnt in the whole preparing for a season thing. You know, there's a time period when we're shifting from one season to another. And that time period is called transition, when we're transitioning from something. So maybe transitioning from one career to another, from a different city. Maybe you're having a baby. Maybe it's a relational status change. That period of the change is called transition. And transition is hard. Like that time of transition, that time when you're changing, that's really tough. It requires something extra of us. You know, in childbirth, transition is the hardest part of childbirth. If you don't know what that is, just pop on into the parents' room, ask a new mum how she enjoyed transition, and I'm sure she'll tell you.
Nobody's going to ask that.
I know.
Nobody.
It'd be funny.
We don't want to know.
Transition's really hard, and it's going to require something different of you. And so I think we have to prepare for that. So we have to prepare that it's going to take something more from us. We have to prepare. And so I think we need to prepare our minds that in transition, I need to prepare that I would have more grace for myself as I find my feet, as I learn what I need to learn in this new season. I need to be prepared that I'm not going to be perfect, that I'm going to get things wrong, that maybe my capacity is going to feel a little tapped. Maybe I might have a shorter fuse because I'm trying to learn all of these new things. And so we have to be prepared in our minds to be graceful towards ourselves, but also be prepared to allow our loved ones to have that same grace and that same space as well while they find their feet. And I think it's important to know that we all transition and adapt at different times, at different rates. And so we need to be able to allow others and have the grace for them. So we need to prepare our minds in that way. I think we need to prepare our calendars also when we're in this season of transition. So whenever our little kids started school and they transitioned from kindy to school, they were so tired at the end of the day. Like so tired at the end of the day, absolutely terrible. And so I learned by the third child, because I hadn't prepared with the first two, by the third child I needed to clear all afternoon activities, like not going to the supermarket, like no play dates, nothing, because they would just fall apart. And I think that we need to, in the same way, when we're going through change, when we're learning a new job, when we're in a new relationship, when we had a baby, I don't know what the change is, you just change city, we need to allow ourselves space in our calendar. Maybe it's time to relook at it and for a season cull some things, but cull the right things. Cull the right things. I think too many times people go, oh no, I need to throw all this stuff out because I don't have the space, but just cull the right things. And I think I could go as practical to say, I think we should prepare our pantry. Prepare our pantry. Like when I'm in a season of change, when we're in a season of transition, sometimes it might mean I just need to have some easy meals. Maybe it's like I'm going to require extra effort and strength here, so I need to fuel my body and have some healthy food. Or it's I need to have like a secret stash of wine and chocolate. Whatever the season calls for. I don't know. I think we need to prepare our pantry and prepare my heart. Like we need to prepare our hearts for this time of transition. Like we need to lean into God. We need to be worshiping. It's going to require more of me. So God, I'm going to need more of you. This is what transition requires. So I think we might need to prepare for it. It's important to have grace for ourselves and grace for our loved ones as we all learn to find our feet in the new.
That's very good. Proverbs 22:3 says, a prudent person foresees danger and takes precautions. A simpleton or a fool goes blindly on and suffers the consequences. Now, we can all probably think of times where we've all been fools or simpletons, knowing that there's something changing ahead, knowing that there's a danger ahead, knowing that there's things to be taken account of ahead, but just assumed we could just keep going on the same way. And I think in all of these seasonal changes, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about being wise, looking ahead into our future and going, what can I do now that is going to make that future as beneficial as possible? There are critical times in all of our journeys where if we do not do this, we'll lose relationships or we'll lose the health of relationships that matter to us. It matters for friendships. If you're going to go into a time where you take on a new job or a new role or you buy into a business or you start a business, you do something like that, it's going to require more of you in that season. And if you've got a family, you're probably going to prioritize your family over that friendship. So if you don't bring your friends into that journey and that seasonal change, you might end up with friends resenting you because you weren't there for them when you needed to, when they thought you should be there, or you just didn't have as much time. But there's the ability to go, hey, I'm getting into the season, the next 6 months to a year, I'd appreciate your prayers. I just want to let you know you do matter to me. We'll make some time, but this is our focus for this next season. And so there's just the ability to go, here's where I'm going. I can see how it's going to potentially impact this stuff, so I'm going to prepare for that change in our lives. Single people out there that maybe want to be married one day, you can prepare for the season ahead by becoming the person you're looking for is looking for. Like that's about all that's in your control without being creepy and desperate. Is that you can become the person you're looking for is looking for. That's how you prepare for the next season, is you work on yourself. You get on fire for God. You go and see somebody to work on your issues, because anybody that's married knows that there's not really married issues. There's only single people issues that we bring to our marriages. And married issues are easy to resolve. They're communication and conflict resolution, but single people issues are, so we can work on those things. We can prepare for the season ahead. Dating, like when we're dating, we can prepare for the season ahead by fixing strong boundaries in our dating relationships, because they prepare us to have strong boundaries when we're married, and strong boundaries protect marriages. And if we don't learn to have them when we're dating, we shouldn't be surprised when they fall over when we're married, because there's a season that God's taking us through to prepare for the thing ahead. When people are engaged, most time is spent preparing for a wedding, but you should be preparing for a marriage, because the wedding's over. And think how much money is spent on a wedding. Imagine if you spent that much money on a marriage, right? What's most important to us? And so there's these ways that we can think about how to prepare. We know that when you get married, let's just talk about that for a moment. I know a lot of people here are married. When you have kids, that puts pressure on your marriage. What are you going to do before you have kids? A baby moon's not enough, by the way, and is ridiculous. But being from the pre-baby moon era, but it's like that's not how you prepare to have kids. That's nice, But there's so much more. You need to talk about the things that really matter about parenting. You need to adjust your life for the sleeplessness. You need to get around some couples who are further ahead in the journey and go have some dinners and pick up as much as you can. That's the beautiful thing about church, is you just find somebody here that looks half decent and invite yourself over to their house, to learn from them. When our kids are getting older, there's a bunch of people that are empty nesters or about to become empty nesters in our church. That's one of the critical moments where marriages break down, because we don't prepare to fall back in love and get the love eyes emoji again. And prepare for our lives when the children aren't at home, and now, maybe that was one of the reasons we stayed together for so long, but now we need to find a new reason to stay together. Yeah. And we need to renew those things. And so we need to prepare for the seasons, practically.
Yeah, that's right. I think it is really important to protect ourselves, because the highest statistic for divorce, aside from men over 50 on their second marriage, they have the highest. Aside from that, the highest statistic for divorce is when children enter the picture, and especially when they depart. And those are huge transition moments, which is why we need to be prepared, which is why we need Jesus, my gosh, which is why we need to adapt. It's so important.
Yeah, I think it's one of the reasons why we really believe in church as a community. Because one, there's ways to learn off each other and prepare for the seasons ahead, and it's important for us to have diverse relationships in our communities like this. But it's also why I believe that, not just having a relationship with the church that is about attending, but is actually about being a part of and committed to other people for the long haul. And in this community, there's many great examples of people that have been here for longer than a decade, and we've done life together for a very long time, is because the same things that we're taught in church, these things of having to forgive each other and having to accommodate for each other's faults and having to not get everything our own way but still journey together, they actually make us good at all of our relationships. And so there's something about being together for the long haul in these environments that is a training ground for the health of all of our relationships. And so hey, we talked about adapting, we talked about preparing, and the last thing we'll talk about is we actually need to embrace certain convictions that carry us through every season. Because seasons, there's things to adapt to, but there's some things that we shouldn't adapt to, that they should remain in every season. Galatians 6:9 says, "Let us not get tired of doing what is good, for at just the right time we will reap a harvest of blessing if we do not give up. Therefore, whenever we have opportunity, we should do good to everyone, and especially those in the family of faith." I love this scripture. He's saying, look, there's times where doing good's favorable, and there's times when it's not. There's times where the fruit comes easy, and there's times when it doesn't, but it doesn't matter the season. Keep doing good, because eventually the season of fruit bearing will arrive if you do not give up. So what do you reckon the key is?
Yeah, so I think the key to having these convictions that serve every season is to have a purpose greater than every season. You got to have a purpose greater than every season. Whether you're in the career you want to be in or not, whether you're in the relationship season you want to be in or not, whether you're in a season of health or not, whether you're in a season where your calendar is full or maybe your calendar is empty, whatever the season, whatever you're going through, if you can have a purpose greater than your season, then that is going to give you something that you're going to flourish in and out of every season. Jesus was asked by a teacher of the law, he said, "What is the greatest commandment?" And he said, "To love the Lord God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, all your strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself." And so for us, in every single season, if we love God with intention, if we love people, like literally preferring them to ourselves, if we keep that purpose in throughout every season, we're going to flourish. We're going to see God in that season because we're loving him and leaning into him, and he will reveal what he's doing in the season. And when we love our people, when we love our relationships, we're also going to discover the incredible uniqueness in our loved ones that perhaps we can forget about when we become too familiar. So having a purpose greater than your season.
It's awesome. Look, every season in our life is an opportunity to become more like Jesus.
Yeah.
That's what we need to remember. It actually tells us in Romans 8, verse 28, that God purposed us to become more like Jesus.
Yeah.
That's the sort of the whole point of this journey, good or bad, favorable or not. In Jeremiah 17:7, it says, "But blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord, whose confidence is in him. They will be like a tree planted by water that sends out its roots by the stream. It does not fear when the heat comes. Its leaves are always green. It has no worries in a year of drought, and it never fails to bear fruit." This is a picture that God wants to have true of your life. In other translations, it says it bears fruit in and out of season. And this is what happens when we stay committed to the things that extend beyond every season, like trusting in the Lord and what He's doing in us. The other thing is this, is every season is an opportunity to live out your purpose, not to prepare, not to wait for your purpose in the future. In 2 Timothy 4 verse 2, it says, "Preach the word of God, be prepared, whether the time is favorable or not. Patiently correct, rebuke, and encourage your people with good teaching." I love that. Whether it's favorable or not, whether it's in season or out of season, keep living out your purpose. Mum and dad moment for a bit. Too many of us treat our purpose, our transformation, and our church like on and off switches through the seasons. We enter seasons whether it's our marriage, our kids, different things going on, and we flick certain things on and off. It's amazing that most people don't flick off their recreation. Most people don't flick off their job for very long. But many people do flick off the church. They flick off using their gifts. They flick off getting up in the morning and living their life on purpose for God's mission, because they're in a season where that's a little bit harder than the season before. Here's how we've always tried to see it. Don't treat your life, your transformation, and your purpose as an on and off switch. Treat it as a dimmer switch. Look, there's times where because of the season, you can crank that thing right up and you can give it everything you want to give it. But there's times where you got to just dim it, get a little bit moody. You can dim that thing down. Don't ever flick it off, because God didn't design you to flick it off. In fact, we're supposed to be people who are becoming like Him in every season. We're supposed to be people who are committed to our church in every season. We're supposed to be people who are active in our gifts in every season. We're supposed to be people who get up every day living for the mission of Jesus to reach and save the lost every day. And yet there's times where it's easy and there's times where it's not easy, but just play with the dimmer switch and find the right balance. Don't go to the on and off switch. As a family, we've never seen family and church as two things that are raging against each other. We've seen ourselves as a family who's on a mission together for God. I tell you, Sandro, who's in Tauranga Plan on Worship this morning, we used to serve in youth ministry before we were on staff here at church, and as a 3-year-old, we'd come and put him to bed in one of the offices in the church so that we could serve in youth ministry. He was doing some naughty stuff the other day. We won't get into that. We're having a father-son chat. And I asked him this question. I said, look, we live in a small community. A lot of people come to our church. It's pretty hard for you to hide in Mount Maunganui. Anytime he does something, we get a call, we get a text, anything happens at school, we know before he knows. And I said to him, look, it must be hard. It must be hard. It's like your life's under a microscope. Do you feel like this is too big of a burden for you to carry? He said, I've never felt like what we do as a family is a burden. It's a privilege. That's out of a 16-year-old kid. Yet so often, that's awesome. He's not really a kid. But sometimes in our seasons, we're pegging things against each other that were never supposed to be tensions to hold together. They were supposed to be things to smash together and embrace together and figure out how to walk out together. So don't put two things versus each other that God never put versus each other. Look, our encouragement to you today is this. The season you're in will change.
That's right.
It will.
Yeah.
Might be a hard season, it'll change.
Yeah.
Be encouraged. It might be an easy season, it'll change. Be encouraged.
Enjoy it.
The way you live in this season will shape your future seasons. It matters. There are things you can focus on no matter what the season, so stay focused on those. They will carry you through the seasons.